Casias Media.
What Melissa Left, a limited series by Weird True Crime.
In part 1, we introduced you to Melissa, the reader, plant addict, hunter, and devoted mom. We broke down her last known movements on June 26, 2025. She took her daughter Sierra lunch at work at 12:57 p.m., sent her a text at 1:33 p.m., and by 1:38 p.m., her phone had been reset.
Melissa left everything behind. Her purse, wallet, IDs, house and car keys, both phones, and according to Mark, thousands and thousands of dollars in the safe. We covered the first hours of the investigation, including the fact that when a witness, Lloyd Duran, called in a tip that night, Melissa's husband shut it down before police could even follow up.
Today, we're picking up where we left off. With the days and weeks that followed, the investigation, more insight into Mark and Melissa's relationship, and the growing list of things about Mark Casias' behavior that Melissa's family cannot explain away. I'm Amber.
And I'm Gina, and this is part 2, 40 minutes.
Let's move on to the morning of Friday, June 27th, 2025. Trudy and Jasmine began planning a search for Melissa. They tried to get in touch with Mark multiple times to include him in search planning. They couldn't reach him. They posted on social media asking for volunteers to come help search. According to Mark, no one contacted him about organizing a search.
That same day, investigators seized Mark's phone. Additional evidence taken included 3 black iPhones, the men's camo boots with the fresh mud, 2 swabs of the suspected blood, Mark's fingerprints, and a buccal swab from Mark. On July 24th, a USB containing data from Lannel was also seized.
Photos taken at the Casias home on June 26th were reviewed by investigators. In one photograph of the bed of Mark's truck, there's a shallow pool of water with a yellow reflective work glove sitting in it. It had not rained in the days leading up to Melissa's disappearance. So where did this water come from?
There's also this. Both Jody and Mark noted there were tire tracks in the yard. In the crime scene photographs, there is mud in the area of those tracks. As stated, it hadn't rained recently. There was no mud anywhere else on the property. So where did the mud come from? Jody, who is himself an avid hunter and tracker, said the tire impressions looked like they came from a larger truck, something like an F-150.
According to the police report, investigators contacted Apple through their law enforcement request process, asking for iCloud data, location history, texts, call logs, anything that might indicate where Melissa was. The data came back empty. No location data, no call logs, no texts. An Apple representative told them no devices were currently linked to Melissa's iCloud account. Her iCloud had been wiped too.
So whoever reset Melissa's phones, and I want to emphasize the word whoever, also deleted everything in her iCloud. Trudy and Jasmine strongly believe there is no way Melissa would have voluntarily done that. And honestly, I can't think of a single mother who would willingly and permanently delete every photo and video of her child.
Absolutely not, which raises the question, what was on those phones that someone needed gone? To understand why that question matters, we need to take a step back and talk about what was really happening inside this marriage. Trudy and Jasmine both told us that Melissa was noticeably different depending on whether Mark was around. When she was alone with family, she was bubbly and talkative, her full self. When Mark was present, she went quiet and kept her head down. Mark controlled the conversation. Trudy said their mother noticed this dynamic from the very beginning of Melissa and Mark's relationship.
A friend of Melissa's shared that her personality changed after she started dating Mark. She described one specific incident. A group of friends went swimming together. When Melissa came out in a conservative one-piece swimsuit, Mark yelled at her in front of everyone and told her to cover up because he didn't want other men seeing her. This friend said Melissa became a duller version of herself around him. Trudy and Jasmine said they witnessed the same thing. And after Mark entered the picture, Melissa gradually stopped spending as much time with her family on her own.
A separate friend of Melissa's told Trudy that Melissa had confided early in the relationship that Mark was hitting her. This friend believes Melissa stayed when she got pregnant with Sierra, and it was common knowledge among people who knew them that Melissa was planning to leave.
Let's talk about that storage unit for a minute, the one Mark didn't know existed. Trudy shared that inside the unit, they found a couple of Melissa's old planners from 1987 and 1988. In one of them, on July 11th, Melissa had written the word bruises in parentheses. According to Trudy, it was common for the sisters and their mother to make small notes like that in their planners, a quiet way of marking significant moments. Trudy still does it.
So Trudy and Jasmine have wondered, what if Melissa was keeping notes like that on her phone? Or what if there were messages or voicemails that told a story someone didn't want told? What we can say with confidence is this: someone who is having a breakdown and frantically trying to leave doesn't typically have the presence of mind to also wipe their entire iCloud account. And investigators found that Melissa's search records going back several years contain nothing. No research, no planning, no trail that would suggest she had been preparing to disappear.
On June 28th, organized searches began. Volunteers gathered at Melissa's parents' house to get assignments, water, and snacks. And that morning, Mark showed up at Melissa's parents' house around 6:30 a.m. He pulled Jasmine aside and told her he had been thinking about it all night, and he, quote, 100% knew Melissa was fine. According to Mark, he found evidence that Melissa left but couldn't give them details. What he did share was that he had found out she had applied for a loan for Sierra's schooling and was rejected. He concluded from this that she was spiraling financially and had probably had a breakdown.
And then, in front of several witnesses, Mark said this, quote, Melissa loves Sierra so much, she would have taken off knowing that after 2 or 3 months, I could declare her dead and the life insurance would pay out, even without a body. Sierra would be set for life. That's how much Melissa loves us. End quote.
That was less than 48 hours after Melissa went missing. He was sitting at her parents' house in front of people who love her, mapping out this life insurance scenario and completely unconcerned that his wife couldn't be located. For the record, in New Mexico, you have to wait 7 years after someone goes missing to have them declared legally dead. And according to Melissa's family, there is already a flag on Melissa's life insurance account. If any claims are made, NMSP will be notified automatically.
Also worth noting, in one breath, he's saying she had a financial breakdown and took off in a panic. In the next, he's saying she planned it carefully enough to account for life insurance timelines. He's offering two completely opposite explanations at the same time.
Mark also suggested to Trudy that Melissa's childhood friend was probably hiding her and encouraged Trudy to sneak up to her house and look through the windows. This friend had actually texted Trudy that morning at 7:25 a.m. asking for updates. When Trudy told her that Mark had accused her, her husband, and her cousin of hiding Melissa, the friend said to come look. She let Trudy walk through every room, every closet, and the trailer on the property belonging to the cousin. No sign of Melissa.
If you're keeping count, that's 3 scenarios Mark has cooked up about Melissa in the span of a couple hours. When Trudy got back from this wild goose chase at the friend's house, multiple witnesses informed her that they saw Mark in the backyard with 10 to 15 people, actively discouraging them from going out to search. He kept pushing the narrative that she left on her own. He never asked to help. He never thanked Melissa's family for organizing the search. He left and did not participate.
Trudy's cousin Alonzo also noted that throughout the morning, Mark kept talking about his alibi. Alonzo thought this was really weird because Mark was telling everyone that Melissa left voluntarily. Why would you keep bringing up your alibi if you believe your wife just walked away? And more importantly, why are you not showing any sign of concern.
Also, on June 28th, two search volunteers found a pile of clothing on the side of the road at the intersection of Highway 518 and Amole Road. A green shirt that resembles a light sweater and blue jeans with a hair tie used to cinch the waistband tighter. One of the people who found the clothing mentioned that Melissa had lost a significant amount of weight due to the thyroid cancer, so maybe they could be hers. This narrative that Melissa used hair ties to tighten her pants has been pushed by certain media outlets. However, Trudy shared that Melissa did not and would not do this with her jeans and had several different sized pants to account for weight gain and loss associated with her thyroid issues.
Mark and Sierra were shown pictures of the clothing, and they both said there's no way they belong to Melissa because of the style and size of the jeans. Once again, NMSP took Mark's word for it and haven't tested the clothing to our knowledge. And while Trudy and Jasmine are frustrated that the clothes haven't been tested, they aren't convinced these clothes have anything to do with Melissa. So everyone seems to be on the same page on this point.
Also, on June 28th, a woman from Texas contacted the New Mexico State Police with a tip. She and two friends had been on a road trip to Taos and visited the area around the Ranchos Church around 7 p.m. They saw a man on horseback praying. They thought it was a beautiful scene and took pictures. The man rode toward them and dropped his sunglasses. When one of the women picked them up and handed them back, she noticed he looked upset and had been crying. He told them he had just come down from the mountain where a search was underway for his cousin.
According to the report, he said they killed her, and I found her and she had her head cut off. He gave his name as Ricky and said his horse's name was Rojo.
The women were disturbed by this interaction and couldn't stop thinking about it. At dinner, they spotted one of Melissa's flyers and called New Mexico State Police. The man was later identified as Rick Valerio, also known as Wild, who owns a blue Dodge truck. In December 2025, a woman named Veronica Short reached out to Trudy and said she had also taken pictures of a man on a horse at the corner of 518 on June 28th at 6:20 p.m. And she sent those pictures. It was Rick Valerio. In the photos, he's with another man wearing jeans, a white t-shirt, and white tennis shoes.
Almost a month later, at the end of July 2025, Agent Mata eventually questioned Valerio at his home on body camera. Valerio was intoxicated and said he didn't remember saying anything. Mata concluded he was making up a story for attention. But we want you to sit with a few details. Rick Valerio owns a blue Dodge truck. He is related to Marcus Montoya, the current district attorney in the 8th Judicial District. There are also rumors about a horse tied to a tree near Burma Road, the original 518, which is now Hiking Trail 18. We're not accusing Rick Valerio of anything, but we don't think this was followed up on adequately.
Trudy shared with us that on Sunday, June 29th, she called Sierra to check in with her, and Mark took the phone. In this recorded call, Mark told Trudy that Melissa would show up by dark that evening. When the sun went down and she hadn't, he called Trudy back and said she'd probably be back in 2 to 3 months. When Trudy asked what he knew, he said he wouldn't share. He also told her they weren't on his level, and if they were, they would understand. Understand what exactly?
In that same recorded call, Mark said he had changed all the locks on the house and installed cameras. Let me reiterate. Mark changed all of the locks on the house he shares with his missing wife within 3 days of her disappearance. He said, and I'm going from the transcript here, quote, if Melissa thought she could just stroll in, she had another thing coming, end quote. And this was her last chance. He said they had positioned the cars in the driveway so that if someone dropped her off, they'd be blocked in. It's important to note here that Melissa's car was moved and parked over a manhole cover on the property. That manhole cover has never been searched, forensically or otherwise. He also mentioned he had been cleaning the house really well that day.
Why would you clean the house and scrub away any potential evidence when your wife is missing? Why change the locks when she left her keys at home and can't use them anyway? And more importantly, Wouldn't you want your wife to be able to come back home? Agent Mata later found surveillance footage showing Mark purchasing new locks at Ace Hardware 3 or 4 months before Melissa disappeared. Investigators concluded this had nothing to do with her disappearance, but it raises a question. How far in advance was Mark preparing for a scenario where Melissa couldn't come home?
Also, in that June 29th call, Mark brought up the blood found in the house. Unprompted. Nobody had asked him about it. He said, quote, "The time frame does not match. The only time she could have been hurt by me, I was identified in Los Alamos. I would have had to hurt Melissa before I left for work. I was in Los Alamos." End quote. He continues to focus on his alibi and how he couldn't possibly have hurt Melissa, even though no one brought this up. This goes back to him telling investigators the night of the 26th that there's no sign of a struggle inside of the house. Why is he just randomly making these statements?
He then talked about being upset because he was being accused of murder and that, quote, people are looking for something that's not there, end quote. Can we say red flag? No one had accused him of anything. He continues to focus on his alibi and how he's being mistreated because people are coming after him.
Not once has he expressed concern for Melissa. Not once does he mention Sierra. Everything in that conversation circles back to Mark, his alibi, his narrative, his theory. At one point, he refers to searching for his missing wife as hunting her. We'll let that sit there. We know some listeners may push back on how much time we're spending on Mark, but these aren't our characterizations. They're his recorded words. And in any missing persons investigation, the people closest to the victim are the first people you look at. There's a reason for that.
On July 1st, Trudy had another recorded phone call with Mark. In this call, Mark talked about how police were after him despite his alibi, and kept bringing up that alibi unprompted, even while insisting Melissa had voluntarily left. He said he had information relevant to finding her, but wouldn't share it with police because he was a suspect. He also mentioned seeing crow and magpie activity near Pot Creek, meaning that there could be a body in that area, but he refused to tell investigators about it.
Once again, he's making conflicting statements and talking in circles. He claimed that Melissa left on her own, while simultaneously referencing bird activity that might indicate remains. He was holding both ideas at once and didn't seem to notice the contradiction, didn't care, or was doing it on purpose to confuse Trudy and take attention away from himself.
Here's an interesting piece of information. In a recorded conversation from July 2nd, Mark told the family that he spoke to Lloyd Duran on July 1st about his sighting of Melissa on Highway 518. Within 2 hours of this phone call, he found surveillance footage from a house at 7065 State Road 518 that shows someone who looks like Melissa walking along the road at 2:18 p.m. Wouldn't you know, Mark now believed Lloyd Duran's tip. But instead of acknowledging that he'd shut it down the night of June 26th, he blamed the family for not telling the police. Jasmine had immediately told the officers on scene the night of the 26th. Mark was the one who told police it couldn't be Melissa.
It's important to note that Mark and Sierra were adamant that any tips received about Melissa should be brought to them first before telling the police, so they could confirm or deny that the tip was correct. This is on this recorded conversation. And this is strange. Not to mention that Mark is the one who told police not to follow up on Lloyd Duran's sighting.
Is Mark an investigator? How would he be able to confirm or deny anything unless he had inside information no one else knows about? And this is going to be controversial, but stay with us. This footage hasn't been forensically analyzed or compared to the clear videos of Melissa at the John Dunn shops earlier that day. The footage is grainy at best, and you can't make out any clear features, only that the woman has dark hair and is wearing a black backpack.
During this recorded conversation, Mark makes a point to blame the other family members for not checking the cameras on Highway 518. Isn't that the police's job? He goes on to say, quote, "We already know how she got out," end quote, and, quote, "We know exactly where they picked her up. She's alive. She's fine. She was walking to where she was going. We know everything," end quote.
So he knows exactly how she got out and where she was picked up. But in the same breath, he states he doesn't want to give the police information because they'll interrogate him. If he did nothing wrong, why is he worried about giving the police information about where Melissa is? He goes on to say that they, meaning he and his daughters, built this whole case. And it's everyone else's fault, meaning Melissa's siblings, parents, and extended family, that so many days have passed without this video. It sounds like he's manipulating the story to place blame on the family for this oversight, when he's the one who dismissed it in the first place.
There's two more things we need to point out about this video. First, Melissa's family didn't know she took a black backpack with her meds, a toothbrush, and that curling iron until July 2nd, the day Mark showed them the surveillance footage from Highway 518. And guess who told them about it? Right, Mark. So now that there's a video of a woman with a backpack on Highway 518, he remembers, oh yeah, Melissa took a black backpack with her. Second, as mentioned in part 1, Mark told investigators the night Melissa went missing that there was a black bag and a blue bag full of hunting clothing missing from their bedroom. To an average person, it sounds like he's insinuating that maybe she took these bags with her. Well, if it is her in the video on Highway 518, where are those bags?
Okay, we're going to go on a side quest here for a few minutes and take a closer look at the timeline of Melissa's last movements, because there's something here that we can't get past. She dropped lunch off to Sierra at the John Dunn shops at 12:57 p.m. It's approximately a 9-minute drive from the shops to the Casias home. So if she drove straight there, she would have arrived around 1:10 p.m. She texted Sierra at 1:33 p.m.
During the 5 minutes between 1:33 p.m. and 1:38 p.m., someone disconnected the phone from iCloud and reset it. And then at 2:18 p.m., 40 minutes after that reset, a person is spotted on surveillance footage at 7065 State Road 518 walking eastbound. According to Google Maps, that location is approximately a 43-minute walk from the Casias home. 40 minutes between the reset and the sighting. 43 minutes to walk there. That is almost identical. And that feels too perfect.
And keep in mind, 43 minutes is just the estimate. That doesn't account for pace, elevation, or any stops along the way. But somehow the time between that phone being reset and a person appearing at that exact spot on 518 lines up almost perfectly with the walking distance between the two locations. Unless she somehow locked the front door without her house key and ran the moment she wiped her iCloud account and hit reset, it doesn't seem plausible. Make of that what you will.
We've covered a lot of ground today. The searches, the recorded calls, and some serious questions about that surveillance footage in the timeline. But there's still more. In our next episode, we're going to get into the investigation failures, the deeper picture of what was happening inside that marriage, and the theories about what could have happened to Melissa. That episode is available right now. We'll see you there. Until next time, stay safe.
And make good choices.
Bye.